right, and welcome back. It's now time for your money. It's now 28 minutes after 8, and today we're talking about debt and debt management. Joining me in studio, we have Pauline Wairimo, who is from Debt Management Solutions. That's the name of the company, and she is a financial coach. Pauline, thank you for joining us this morning. And
Thank you,
debt, of course, is something that many of us, depending on how you were brought up, may fear. I remember, and if I would share my experience, I remember my parents telling me that if anything, make sure you never, ever, ever get into debt. Whether that is practical or not is something that we're going to discuss. But let me start from right there, Pauline. Is it a bad thing to be in debt?
Thank you, Michael, for having me here today. It's not a bad thing to be in debt. So as you rightfully put it, it depends on many other things, e.g. how you are socialized. For me, I always say two things about debt. Before you borrow, you need to think through how you will first and foremost pay it. And then you also need to ask yourself why you're borrowing. And my thumb of the rule is if you're borrowing to put it into an investment that will then create some income, then you're good to go. Otherwise, rethink.
Okay, so you've talked about thinking through why you're borrowing,
Yes.
which would make me imagine then, if I think through and there are good reasons, like you've said, putting it into an investment, then I may have a valid reason to borrow. Let's start with maybe personal debt, for example.
Yes.
There are people who find themselves perpetually getting into debt or going deeper into debt. Are there certain habits that maybe perpetuate that?
Yes, one of the things is that you really must get to know what your money personality is. Just like we know you could be an extrovert or introvert in normal circumstances, even for money, you need to know what triggers your spending, for example. Why are you always perpetually in debt? It's just because you are just living above your means. You could be this person who has such a good heart, and you're the go-to person when people are in trouble. You could be this person who's at the stage where you're all about success, your image. And so you become a Kim Kardashian, you fund the image. So you need to understand your money personality. What are your money triggers?
Okay, that's an interesting term, money personalities.
Yes.
What personalities are there so that maybe somebody can now categorize and find where they lie?
I have 5 names and I've Kenyanized them.
Okay.
One of them is Mother Teresa or Father Teresa.
Mother or Father Teresa?
Mother or Father Teresa.
I think I probably know what that one might be, but carry on.
So this is a kind of person who is so giving, and there's nothing wrong with giving. But I always ask, to what extent? Would you lend money to a sick relative, which is valid, at the expense of paying your rent? You know your landlord will catch up with you. There's a Kim Kardashian or keeping up with the Jonas.
Okay.
Some people
That's
do
the
that. That's the second personality. Just because you're angry or upset, you just find yourself getting into a mall and just spending. The third one I call a robber, living in a cycle of debt. So you fuliza to Tala, and from Tala to branch, and from the mama chama to back to your father. So you're always in a cycle of debt. But hey, out here, you look fine. We can see you sort of are just making ends meet. Then there's a fourth one who I call a miser. I'm sure, Michael, you've been with people who, when you go out, they hardly spend a coin.
You're right.
When it gets to paying the bill, they'll either dash to pick a phone call or they're going to the ladies. And so just generally because without knowing, they were brought up in want or need. And it gives them joy to just keep hoarding. Then the final person is an ideal investor. This is a person we'd like to come out of here today. You plan your money, you think through that debt process, for example, and you have to know that it comes with sacrifices. You've got to really be resilient. Nothing comes easy.
Okay, so what we should be targeting here is the ideal investor, if at all we're going to borrow.
Exactly.
All right, let me just go through these personalities again and start with Mother Teresa. And are these qualities that possibly one can outgrow? Because again, I'm imagining some of them may be out of socialization. They could also be tied to our personalities as individuals. For
Yes.
instance, sanguines are very happy.
Yes.
They want to make everybody happy. So naturally, they may spend without necessarily thinking about tomorrow.
Yes, you can. And let me tell you this. At one point, you can be Mother Teresa. At another instance, you can be a Kardashian. So yes, you can win yourself of this depending on how much effort you put into, as long as you identify that this is who you really are, and then you work on that. And it's not bad. It's not bad. But these personalities are not, it's not a crime to be any. But you find that there are those that are dominant, and then that is why you need to do something about that.
Okay. All right. And, okay, just in case you're writing notes, there is Mother Teresa, Kim Kardashian, the robber, the miser, and the ideal investor. Let's look at the ideal investor. And how does one ensure that their borrowing is towards a good end? And the reason I ask that is because I may, for instance,
Yes.
want to run a side hustle of selling shoes. And borrowing money from John to buy this shoe, and I'm going to sell at a certain amount, may be a good idea.
Yes.
But may not translate to actually what I plan it to be. So how do I ensure that I'm an ideal investor?
Okay. So to me, first of all, you've got to set your goals. Financial goals is one of them. But in your life, really, what do you want? In the next 3 months, 6 months, that's for short-term goals. In the next 1 year, where do you want to see yourself? In the next 3 to 5 years. So set your goals very clearly. And this is not only financial. Think about spiritual, your relationships, your health, and your personal development. So your will of life, or the will of life in your life should be balanced. From there, we've just discussed about your money personality. Know who you really are. After that, please come up with a budget and try as much as possible to stick to it. It's not enough to know what you're spending this month's salary, for example, if you're employed on, but exactly the propositions. I call it the 50-20-30 rule.
50-20-30.
50-20-30 rule. So the ideal scenario is that before you spend, take away 20%. This can be towards an emergency fund for a rainy
And this
day.
is in form of what, savings?
And this is in form of savings,
Okay.
yes. And you can also use that 20% to invest, say in that side hustle for the shoes. Or if you're in debt, use that portion to pay. Because it doesn't make sense to save if you're already in debt. Now, the 50%, I recommend that you use it for essentials. We are always tempted to think that paying your house help is not as important as paying school fees. Or you'd rather look smart but die hungry in a posh house. So for me, 50% is to the, goes to the essentials, which whether it rains or shines,
this must be paid.
You
We're
must
talking
be
rent,
paid.
Bills, utilities.
School fees if you're a parent, fuel, lunch. Many people forgo and say, I'm on diet, but we know exactly what the reason is behind. And then there's a 30%. I know we are strained right now, and we seem to think that luxury, things like going on holiday, things like treating your kids out on a Sunday is really a no-go zone. Things like attending a wedding will cost you money. We must do these things. It's part of life. After all, you work so hard, Michael. Why can't you just pigia your mwili pole? So the 30% goes to such things. You'll be called for a harambe. There'll be a friend's funeral. You have to travel, you know, home for a function. That's where that comes from. And I recommend, once that is exhausted, it is exhausted. So the temptation we find ourselves in is to have the non-essentials, let's say, taking 70%. Right. Because we are Africans, and we are expected to come in handy when things don't seem to go right, because you're working anyway. You live in Nairobi, for example. So that's where my winning formula comes in. Make it 50, 20, 30 for any income that comes in.
Okay.
Then eventually, you need to grow. You need to create wealth. We find ourselves caught up in consuming. And if you looked at your budget today, if you listed and saw where your money goes, a big chunk goes into paying someone else. when will you start paying yourself? So start by growing that amount, the 20%, by putting it somewhere. A time is coming when you will leave KTN because you've reached the retirement age. A time will come when your body will give in. A time will come when your children will grow, go away, and you're on your own. So think investments, and that's the other strategy. Then finally, think retirement plan. As you're working today, as you're doing your side hustle, as you're doing your business, please think about cash flow. And to me, cash flow is king. If you can't put food on the table, if you can't buy clothes, if you don't have shelter, it's gonna be tricky. So think retirement plan.
So use your working years, your able years, effectively to ensure that when retirement comes, you have a plan.
You have a fallback because it's about bread and butter.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, let's go back to practical issues, and I'll come back to this 50, 20, 30 rule of yours. But practically, you've mentioned that we live in a certain society and we want to be accepted in society.
Yes.
And one of the things that you'll find, for example, if we have social functions like a wedding or a funeral, we're expected to participate. And participate here is not just singing and dancing. It is also chipping in financially. You'll either have a committee that is going to come to you and say, this is what. Is there an amount that we should put aside for that? And when that amount is exhausted, are we okay to say, sorry, I cannot participate in this particular one?
Absolutely. That is the 30% I was talking about. Never fear to say that, Chief, I feel for you. I am really sorry this has happened, and the most I could do is avail my services in your committee, let's say as the treasurer or the transport manager. And for me, my contribution this time is my time. And I know society will be against you. You'll have to go against the grain. But remember, one of the traits of an ideal investor is sacrifice. So you would have to sacrifice your image, maybe, and all those behind the scenes talk about you, but to stand firm.
Pauline, is that practical in the environment and society and culture that we live in? And maybe that is partly why we end up being in debt, because of the culture that we have imbibed. Our socialization is such that if somebody came to me with a need, for instance, somebody's son is being taken to hospital and I honestly do not have money. Please, nisaidie. It becomes very difficult for me to say, you know what, I've exhausted my 30%, therefore my 20% of savings, or is it 30%, and I cannot help you until next month.
Yeah. Michael, it's gonna be hard, but it's doable. And I'm out here to advance that. It's possible to achieve that. It takes time. You've got to be patient. But we have to change our mindset. It's not enough to continue doing what we've been doing. I think for me, if I was asked what to do about that, I would say, please get an insurance policy that covers last respect. It will possibly cost you 1,000 bob every month, and you'll be able to cater for that. Should a spouse, God forbid, or a parent or a child rest, then you're able to sort that immediately without necessarily looking for a friend or harambe being done. And for medical, we now have NHIF. Sacrifice 500 shillings every month and you'll be good to go should that disaster or calamity strike. So change of mindset. It's not going to be easy, but it's doable.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that we have to emphasize very, very much is that change of mindset.
Yes.
Now, let's come to investments. And a scenario is painted here that somebody wants to invest or maybe do that side hustle or even, just get into a business. Would you advise taking a loan or using your savings? Because your savings, like you mentioned, has a certain target. It could either be used for investment or it could also be for an emergency. So would you advise on taking a loan for investing or using your savings?
I would recommend that if you're starting that side hustle, put away some money first. It's not good to just get into that business on borrowed money. And you can raise funds in different ways. Social capital from your friends, your relatives at no cost. And also just from your savings. If you know you want to start something 2 years from now, start saving now. As the business grows, then the business will ask you for something more. Maybe a bigger premises, more stock. Then at that point you can reconsider. should I then borrow? And remember, I said two things. How will you pay it? And are you putting it in an investment or growing, an asset growing venture? So always, if you can, and I know it's possible, put away something, pool resources. I don't know why we always think that you have to do it alone. If you're starting something worth 500,000, get 5 friends. How much will that be from each of you?
If you got 5,000 from 5 friends?
Yes. No. If what you're starting is gonna cost 500,000 to begin with, and your 5 friends, so how much do
If you
each
put it
of
together,
you?
you can each divide that.
Exactly. So think that way. Think combining. Think numbers. There's unity. There's strength in unity whenever you're starting. Don't go it alone.
Okay.
That way it might change, or it might mean that you change your strategy on capital raising. Yes.
All right, let's now, I see we are running out of time, and would like to help anybody that might be in debt.
Yes.
What strategy does one use when you're already in debt to get out of debt?
Okay. Please do this. Just 3 simple or 4 things. Sit down, list all your debts on a piece of paper. Look at them and see also what each of them are costing you. How much are you paying in terms of interest? So start with the highest in terms of interest rate to the lowest. Then come up with a schedule of how you want to get rid of them. I say that it's easier to get rid of the 2 small loans and then be left with this big major loan. Somehow psychologically it gives you reprieve and you feel like you're achieving something. After that, go back to the 50-20-30 rule. Check your budget and say, this is going here, but I can redirect it to here. You're better off owing no man anything, as the Bible says.
Oh, no man, nothing but love.
Exactly. And then finally, come up with a repayment strategy. If whatever you had set to do didn't work, don't worry. Go back to the lender and say, look, I need you to assist me. We come up with a repayment schedule, reschedule this, and many lenders are willing to do that. Institutions are now reaching out to people who've borrowed. So don't be afraid to go back and say, I would like more time and less pressure on me, because again, if it's a business and it shuts down, then both you and the lender lose out. And so for me, I would say again, kindly check, are you funding your lifestyle by borrowing? Because that's usually where we all get caught up.
That's where we go wrong.
Yes.
All right, small print. Maybe underscore the importance of looking at, for instance, interest. There are many people who, when taking a loan, they look at the bigger figure without necessarily calculating, when I'm paying back this loan, this is how much I am actually taking against how much I'm actually going to pay. And you might find sometimes you're actually paying more than double what you've taken, again, depending on how far you spread it. Maybe they just underscore the importance of ensuring you get those little details. They say the devil is in the details.
In the details. Take your time, Michael. I would urge people to relax. Don't be in a hurry. Take your time to go through the small print. Revisit what this person had offered. We are always caught up, as you say, in solving this problem now, immediately, because either you've been thrown out of your house, so you need shelter. Your child has been thrown out of school, you need, Fuliza will be there to give you. But just think about the total cost of those funds. If you're paying it within 5 years, yes, it's $1 million, Bob, but after those 5 years, how much will you have paid back? That might make you not even borrow in the first place.
All right, and for somebody who might think that maybe they are purely borrowing to fund, they're living beyond their means, but they're not able to identify that for themselves. And what I mean by that is I may be eating what maybe is a bit more expensive than I should. How do I self-check to ensure that I'm not living beyond my means?
Just be real. Where are you at in life? There are 3 stages. You could be initially, there's the lower one, which is survival. Your need or worry is food, shelter, and clothing. That's what eats your head every day. The second stage is success or recognition. Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it because people say to you, today you're really smart, I like your suit, and that gives you joy, that suits your ego. The third one, where we all should aim at, is at the significance stage, where you're aiming at making a difference or impacting people in their lives. So check where you are, and that will determine where you're going from there. So if you're at the success stage, maybe you need to rethink again why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you upgrading your car? Why are your children moving from this school to the other? Why are you moving homes or estates? Is it because you saw me doing that? Or is it because you're looking for affirmation? So those 3 stages will help you to undo to identify exactly.
All right, let's go back as we wind up to your 50-20-30 rule. There are some who may feel that this rule is specifically for somebody who's earning a certain amount of money. In other words, if I'm earning, say, 20,000, my rent is this much. I live, you know how Nairobi can be, and urban areas really can be expensive. Is this 50-20-30 applicable to any salary, or is it a certain amount going upwards?
It's applicable to any amount.
Even if I'm earning 10,000
Even if you're earning 5,000 shillings, it's applicable to any income or amount passing through your hands. So I'm out here to spread the gospel that we have enough. It's just that we don't know how to rechannel. So for me, whatever amount that passes through your hand, always take out first, before anything. Take out the 20%. So if today I decide to buy you lunch after this, I give you 1,000 bob, take out 20%, that would be 200 shillings. So as you're deciding what to do with it, please budget on 800. Don't budget on 1,000. And it's as simple as that. So the number or amount of income coming in, whether you're salaried or from your hustle or from your business, doesn't matter. It is the discipline of deciding that this is first what I'm taking out, and with an objective. Don't just save. You're saving to do what? Because it's easy to go back and pinch into it to fund your lifestyle.
Absolutely. Well, Pauline, we're out of time. We'll have to wind up right there. Maybe just a rule of thumb as your closing remark.
We can all be financially free. It is bad if you're living above your means right now. There's good, bad, and ugly debt. For me, if it's creating or generating income, it's good debt.
All right, thank you very much. And that is Pauline Wairimo. Debt Management Solution is the company, and she's a financial coach. Thank you for joining us this morning and helping us out. In case you're in debt, hopefully that has helped you and you have a solution now how you can slowly get yourself out of debt. And if you're thinking of getting into debt, you know which kind of debt you should get into. Well, that's where we wind up the show now. It's now 10 minutes to 9 o'clock. I take this opportunity to thank you all for watching Morning Express this morning. Do have yourselves a wonderful day, but do stay with us right here on KTN News. We've got News Center coming up. Brenda Zeda Radido is going to be taking up the reins of News Center to be giving you news and reviews. Do have yourselves a wonderful and a profitable day. God bless.